Welcome to the 16th Annual Maine Human Resource Convention from the Samoset Resort in Rockland, Maine. My name is Neil Borjon from jobsandme.com, and with us today is former Governor Angus King. Angus will be talking a little bit about how he ties in factual history of historical events with decision making. Angus.
Well, this morning I told the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the famous 13 days in the fall of 1962, and talked about how President Kennedy made probably the most important decisions that have ever been made in this country that kept us out of a nuclear war, and it was very, very close. And the principles that I talked about after telling the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis are, number one, you have to establish a vision. What is it you want out of the decision-making process? Not the decision itself, but a sort of big picture. Secondly, you got to put together a team to help you make the decision. All of us are always smarter than any of us. And you want to have a team that's diverse, that doesn't have the same viewpoint, that will bounce ideas around and come up with options. The third thing you have to do is once you get the data for the decision, you have to probe and question. Questioning is an important leadership and decision-making ability. You can't just take people's word for things. You have to say, how does it really work? President Kennedy had to say, how many missiles are there? How many Russian troops? What would the consequences be? And all of those kinds of things. And then you have to decide. You have to go off, weigh the risks, and make the best decision that you can. But the most important thing, I think, is to create an atmosphere in your group, in your team, where they are free to give you their best thinking, where they're not intimidated, where they're not worried about being laughed at, where they're not worried about being put down for what they say. And in President Kennedy's decision-making process during the 13 days, he did two very smart things. One, he didn't go to all the meetings of the so-called ex-com, the group that was advising him, because he knew that if he was there, his very presence as the leader would sort of stifle the discussion. And secondly, an atmosphere was created in the room where everyone felt they could say what was on their mind without fear of being looked down upon or laughed at or anything else. And in that way, the best options came out, and ultimately good decisions were made that literally saved the planet.
Follow-up question, Governor. How do you see the next generation, Generation Y, the millennials, since you are a teacher now and you're teaching at a school, how do they make decisions, and how do you see that changing from the generations before, like the baby boomers and the Xers now?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that they have so much access to more information. There's just, you can, on the internet and through the media, you can get just a ton of information. So I think they're used to that. They're used to having the information. I think sometimes they may tend to make decisions too fast. One of the lessons from the Cuban Missile Crisis was if Kennedy had made the decision on the first or second day, it would have been the wrong one.
Right.
And you don't want to force it. Sometimes you have to let things sort of bubble up. And I think sometimes the newer generation, because everything moves so fast.
Well, it's that quick on demand. They want it now.
Yeah,
you know?
But you don't want decisions on demand. Sometimes
Exactly.
decisions take a little time. And if there's anything I would caution, it would be get the information, get the data, but talk it through and take some time, because sometimes your first instinct isn't right, and you've got to be willing to change your mind. You've got to be willing to listen to new information. You've got to be flexible and creative.
Right.
And that was certainly what got us through the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. At this time, I just wanted to thank everyone here at the Samoset Resort, MaineHR.com, Law Publishers, jobsandme.com, Filmosity, and Governor King.